be talking to you today about is prostitutes and dinner parties, and what, even more importantly, what we can learn from this. So, the party we're going to be focusing on took place over 2,000 years ago in a city called Jerusalem and was hosted by a man called Simon. Simon was a well-respected and honourable man, and he was an important leader in the Jewish church, a Pharisee. And as you would expect for a religious leader of his time, he worked hard to do the right thing, to keep up his reputation as being a good, holy person. So why is it worth us paying particular attention to this tonight, since there's been countless parties before and since this one, many of which may have been grander or more elaborate than the one we're going to focus on tonight? Well, as we'll see in the passage, with Jesus in attendance, the evening did not go quite in the direction that Simon was planning. What's more, the events that unfold in this account give us a few pointers on our attitude towards others, both individually and collectively as a church. Let's take a look at the passage together, which is in Luke chapter 7, verses 36 to 50. I'm going to be reading from the Living Bible, which words things a bit more bluntly than in the NIV. You can follow along with me on the screen. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to come to his home for lunch, and Jesus accepted the invitation. As they sat down to eat, a woman of the streets, a prostitute, heard that he was there and brought an exquisite flask filled with expensive perfume. Going in, she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping with her tears falling down upon his feet. And as she wiped them off with her hair, kissed them and poured perfume on them. When Jesus' host, a Pharisee, saw what was happening and who the woman was, he said to himself, "This proves that Jesus was no prophet, for if God really had sent him, he would have known what kind of woman this is." Then Jesus spoke up and answered his thoughts. "Simon," he said to the Pharisee, "I have something to say to you." "All right, teacher," Simon replied, "go ahead." Then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to two people, £5,000 to one and 500 to the other. Neither of them could pay him back. So he kindly forgave them both, letting them keep the money. Which do you suppose loved him most after that? "I suppose the one who had owed him the most," Simon answered. "Correct," Jesus agreed. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, "Look, see this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't bother to offer me water to wash the dust off my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You refused me the customary kiss of greeting, but she has kissed my feet again and again from the time I first came in. You neglected the usual courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has covered my feet with rare perfume. Therefore her sins, and they are many, are forgiven, for she loves me much. But the one who is forgiven little shows little love." And he said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." Then the men at the table said to themselves, "Who does this man think he is, going around forgiving sins?" And Jesus said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." So, the story starts with nothing out of the ordinary. Simon, a religious leader, invites Jesus, an influential Jewish man, to dinner. What makes this story significant is the sinful woman, the prostitute, who hears about this and decides to go trash the party. To add a little context to this, the woman would have been seen as being little more than scum by most of the Jews at the time, particularly religious leaders such as Simon. No one in religious society who cared about their social status, what others thought of them, would want to acknowledge a woman like this, let alone let them into your house and eat your food. You can see the logic behind this. What would the neighbours think if they saw a prostitute walking out your front door? Just think of the gossip that must have been ensued. Did you hear that Simon, oh you know Simon, the Pharisee, last night? You won't believe who I saw walking out his front door. Despite this, and knowing how everyone around her looked down her noses at her, thinking that she was worthless and evil, she took up the courage to go to Simon's house, where she knew she wouldn't be welcome. She went there not to cause trouble, but to see the one person she knew she could rely on for help, Jesus. What's more, she brought a gift of expensive perfume. We're not talking cheap stuff like eau de vie smart price, proper stuff we should have had to work hard to afford. She was showing that person that the person she was about to see, Jesus, was important to her and worth the extra effort. Then when she did arrive at the house, know what she did? She wept at Jesus' feet, washing them with her tears. Then she dried them with her hair and then poured the expensive perfume over them. This is quite an elaborate way to say, oh, hello, I'm sure you agree. You might think this is a bit odd, a bit of an odd thing for a woman to do. I would feel pretty awkward if some random person came up to me and started crying all over my feet, and I'm sure you would do too. However, at the time, washing the guest's feet was common practice. It showed respect for that person after walking about on the dusty roads. In this case, the woman had gone above and beyond the norm, washing his feet with her own tears. She must have been crying quite a lot. Then drying them with her hair and using expensive perfume, the woman was demonstrating her respect to Jesus, humbling herself before him in this quite elaborate fashion. And as we note later in the passage, the person who would have expected to do this was the host, Simon, who couldn't be bothered. So at the moment, the gatecrasher is being a better host than Simon, the supposed real host. So, does this make him realise that he needs to up his game and become a better person? No. He remains fixed in his ways and becomes hostile both towards the woman and towards Jesus for allowing this to happen. Simon is so fixated in his way of doing things and being a holy person that he misses this dramatic display of remorse and faith that this woman is displaying right in front of his very eyes. Instead, all he can see is the bad stuff she's done in the past. Rather than embracing this woman and congratulating her for her courage and her decision to say sorry to Jesus and trying to turn her life around, he dismisses her and accuses Jesus of being ungodly for not doing the same. However, as we saw, Jesus puts him right. He criticises Simon for his lack of love towards this woman and failing to be a good host, and at the same time forgives the woman for her past actions and praises her for her faith and love towards him. As individuals and as a church, I think that there are two things that we can take away from tonight's passage. The first one is to be accepting like Jesus, and secondly, to be repentant like a prostitute. Let's briefly take a look at both of these points in a bit more detail. First of all, being accepting like Jesus. As Christians, and collectively as a church, we must remember that it's our job to care for the world that is far from Jesus. We are not here to be prudish and proper. The church is not a club for Mr. and Mrs. Goody Two-Shoes. Neither is it God's waiting room for good people. It doesn't exist just to keep you safe and cosy until you pop your dogs and go to heaven. Just because someone doesn't act or look or behave in the way that you find acceptable does not mean that they are any less loved by God. Just because someone isn't wearing clothes that you like does not make them any less acceptable to God than yours. Just because someone has not yet encountered Jesus does not mean that they should feel any less comfortable here in this or any other church. This might sound fine in theory, but would you be able to put this into practice? What would you do if these people came into our church? Would you be able to accept them without judging them? First of all, how about if a prostitute walked in? Or maybe a drug addict? or a person with tattoos all over their face. Or maybe someone effing and blinding. These are just a few ideas. But whatever a person's situation, whatever they may be, would you be able to welcome them without judgment and without looking down your nose? Then let's fast forward 2, 5, 12 months. These people now want to get more involved in the church and be more active. Maybe they want to get baptised or be a member. Would you still be able to accept them? Would you be able to accept them despite their differences and their backgrounds? Can you accept that they can still be followers of Jesus, still be Christians, still be active in the church community? And who knows, maybe even become members or leaders of the church? If you don't think you would be able to do this, maybe you need to ask yourself why. As we've seen in the passage, Jesus could. And if it's good enough for Jesus, it should definitely be good enough for us. Secondly, being repentant like the prostitute. We need to make sure that we are taking a new leaf, or we're taking a leaf out of the prostitute's book when it comes to respecting and repenting and saying sorry to Jesus. In this passage, we've seen that she's gone all out to honour Jesus to the best of her ability, not only giving an expensive gift, but more importantly, that she is respecting and honouring him. This is far more than can be said of a religious man at a party. We need to make sure that we're not getting bogged down by religious baggage that people accumulate over time. A focus on particular behaviours, standards or routines may make us lose sight of what is really important, a genuine relationship with those around us and with Jesus. I hope this has left you with something to think about, both how we accept others and how we accept others. And now we're going to sing There Is a Green Hill Far Away.